You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacalyn.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome. We are so happy to have you with us today. This is Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. I am your host, executive producer, director, and broadcast engineer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. This show is near and dear to me. It's the first one I started out. We now have 18 shows, but I started Stories of Hope, Inspiration, and Overcoming Adversity because I wanted people to have a place to feel safe and come forward and share their story. And today we have a story unlike any that we've ever had before. I want to bring on our guest. Her daughter is a survivor of sex trafficking, and she started an organization called Childproof America. Her name is Kelly, and Kelly joins us now. Hi, Kelly. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm honored to be here and to share with your audience the very important issue of human trafficking.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here and for your transparency and sharing your story. I mentioned to you backstage that I'm a very big fan of Law and Order SVU, and they do have stories on there about human sex trafficking or human trafficking, but we don't see a lot of it in the news. We don't see a lot of major nighttime shows talking about this. And I'm wondering, before we get into exactly what happened with your daughter and your family and you, why do you think that is that we don't hear more about this?
You know, I think it's not a topic, you know, that the public really wants to face. Who wants to ever consider a child being sold for sex with an adult male? Those words do not gel in the same sentence, in the same mindset. So I do think that a lot of lack of exposure on this issue is because it's so scary. It's so scary for our country to really comprehend that this is something on top of everything else that we're dealing with that we need to consider. And it's something that affects our most precious treasures, and that is our children. But we can't bury our heads in the sand, but yet we don't want to run for the hills in fear. What we need to do, Dr. Jacalyn, is we need to understand this issue, because when we understand it, we know then how to identify a threat and how to keep our kids safe. And that is exactly what Childproof America was founded upon. It is human trafficking. I just want to say, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the globe today, generating upwards of $15 billion globally. This is not just an issue in a foreign city or perhaps in a city here in the United States that we see high levels of crime. This is actually a exploitation of our most vulnerable population, which is our kids, that infiltrates suburbia, inner city, schools, churches, coffee houses, and shopping malls. And so what I'm here today to share with your listeners and your viewers is just, what does this look like? Human trafficking. SVU is, you know, I see this on SVU, but this is like sensationalized. What about the movie Taken? This isn't something that I need to be concerned about, because the movie projected this issue to be a white man and somebody being kidnapped. That doesn't apply to me, right? I don't need to worry. This isn't something that's actually going to be up close and personal in my own child's life. This is something that's distant. And that's kind of a coping mechanism, I believe, in how people are able to process human trafficking in the United States.
You bring up so many good points. It's almost like, oh, that's not going to happen in this country. It's not going to happen in my town. It's not going to happen in my school, my church, my mall, my community, but it's happening all the time. So I'd love to delve into what happened with your daughter and how you learned about it. Do you feel comfortable sharing that?
I can definitely share some key points in our story. So my daughter, raised in a Christian home, and was a varsity athlete, very respectful, very obedient. We never had any issues with her when she was growing up, but she experienced a traumatic event. That is so key for people to understand. Trauma recalibrates the brain and literally kind of stops that emotional development at that time of trauma. So in our case with our daughter, she had experienced a traumatic event. My husband and I became aware of that event, and we felt we were doing the right thing with putting her into counseling with our pastor, with our Christian counselor. But little did we know the complexity of trauma and the effect of that on a developing young person's brain and their cognitive development. So we were trying as parents to help heal that trauma. But unfortunately, word got out around her school, which is a ranked top 7 in the country, which we felt was a very safe and very good school district. And it is a very good school district. However, there were definitely some gaps there in my daughter's safety. We identified that she was very clearly struggling. Some of the behaviors that she was exhibiting was beyond alarming. And we were given a tip that a pimp was going to take our daughter. And I can't even tell you, Dr. Jacalyn, my whole world imploded. When I heard the P word for the first time in my suburban community that I felt was safe and had lived there for 20 years, when I heard that a pimp was coming into our presumed safe community to take my child who was a minor, it was a life-changing moment. We actually,
Question.
yes.
So I am also like, what? How does this happen? So how did you receive or find out about this message that this pimp was coming?
My daughter had actually confided in somebody, and it was an adult. And that adult clearly recognized that this was a very serious situation. And although my daughter told her this information in confidence, my friend and the adult knew that I needed to have this information. And so she came to me and divulged something that was shared with her in confidence. But when your child's life is at risk, obviously, you need to dismiss any kind of promises of, I'm not going to tell your parents. And she did. And it was so devastating. And this all started in my daughter's school. It started in her school with other peers. And so we may think that a trafficker or a pimp looks so dangerous, and their demographic is XYZ, and they're carrying guns, and they're whatever, fill in the blank. But I am here to tell you, a trafficker looks just like you and me. They blend into our society. They blend into our classrooms and our coffee houses. I can tell you, some pimps, yes, they look very scary, but the majority of pimps / traffickers look like everybody else because they blend in. And that's what makes it so scary and so dangerous, is that we've taught our kids stranger danger, right? We've taught our kids, hey, watch out for somebody that's trying to get you in the car with a puppy. That is not human trafficking at all. And adopting and living by that old generational mindset is what makes us vulnerable as parents and as a society.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for that. I think you just hit on something that's really important. People need to know exactly what human trafficking is. You just shared with us that the trafficker looks just like any of us. What is it that a human trafficker wants to do? What is their goal? What is their objective?
So it is so important for parents to understand, and caregivers. I want to say this includes grandparents and aunts and uncles, anybody that comes in contact with a youth. It is so important to understand the mythology behind grooming. I want to say, I just want to put in there that many traffickers are females that look like a friend, right? They look nice and friendly and they care about you and you want to hang out, with other females, but boys are also trafficked. So it's so important for parents to understand that there's a grooming process involved. There is kidnapping that does take place, but I think it's probably about 1% of trafficking cases. 99% of cases involve building that trust with their target. And I say target because they identify somebody as a victim well before they ever approach them. So they may be watching social media and see that somebody's going on and posting how they're fighting with their parents, they just broke up with their boyfriend, or they don't have any friends. So there are people that are watching for vulnerable youth. And perhaps another way is, that they are, in my daughter's case, people at school. And how teenagers want to talk. Oh, this happened to this person. She's vulnerable. That's what happened with my daughter. And a relationship began that was non-existent before with this individual. And hey, do you want to just hang out on Friday? Hey, what about sneaking out? What about sneaking out? So it's a very slow process. The number one stage in grooming is building that trust, and it's called befriend. Number one is befriend. Then once they have that kind of friendship established and that trust is kind of sparked, the next stage is introducing substances. So unfortunately, we know our kids, can experiment. So they increase the access to substances and they get them addicted to alcohol, to different drugs. And then they begin to separate them emotionally from their family. So in our case with our daughter, I was always so close with my daughter. We had a very close family relationship, all of us. But my daughter started to pull away and became very disrespectful and very rebellious. That's so important in the grooming stages for the trafficker because they know that their parents are the authority figure. The parents are the ones that help them kind of navigate their moral compass. And so it's very important for them to start representing their parents as the bad guy. And that's what happened to us. Do you mean your parents give you a curfew? You mean they check your cell phone? Oh, they clearly don't trust you. They clearly don't want you to be free. I'll bet you can't wait to get out of that house when you're 18. And the child, after months of hearing that, starts to buy in. And then they start to separate them from their normal peer group. A peer group, perhaps, that they grew up with that would hold them accountable and say, hey, wait a minute. We don't smoke weed. We don't sneak out. We don't put nudes on social media. What are you doing? So traffickers know that in the grooming process, they need to separate them from their normal peer group that would hold them accountable. And then we escalate into ultimately capitalizing on them. Grooming can take 1 to 2 years. This isn't something that's achieved overnight. It's so much centered on growing and building that trust. And then that target becomes pretty much compliant to anything and everything that trafficker wants. And then at the end, at that final stage, they capitalize on that vulnerability and that trust that they have finessed for 1 year to 2 years. And then that's when the target finally understands what exactly has happened to them. But it's too late by then. They have separated from family, from friends. They're addicted to some type of drug or using. And then there's threats. If you don't do what we tell you you're going to do, what we tell you to do, we are going to hurt your family. We're going to hurt your siblings. We are going to take the video that we shot of you and we're going to blast it all over your school and all over your community. So understanding the grooming stages is critical to understanding the issue of exploitation.
So much information there, and it's just really heartbreaking but informative. That's part of the reason why you're here, is to get this message out. We have to take a quick break, but what I'd like to ask you when we come back is, in order for these traffickers to groom people, do they have to have a sense of whether or not somebody's going to be, in other words, some people maybe are more groomable than others. So are they studying the kids in advance? Or are they doing some type of research? Okay, so let's come back with that, if that's okay with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. So we're going to take a break, and what we're going to do is we're going to hear a woman named Ilo, I-L-O. She is a singer from the UK. She's also performed here in the States. She sings a song called Heroes in Disguise. She's represented by the record label Licorice Dragon Records. I had the privilege of interviewing her a couple of weeks ago, and I was really taken by this music and really moved by it. So I just want to play this for everybody. This is Ilo. You can go over to iTunes and purchase the song Heroes in Disguise. Let's take a look, and then we'll be back with Kelly.
Picture this, a life where you can leave your pain, a life where you can start again somehow. Picture this, a vision that can change a prayer, happy heart that's always there in the now. So don't be afraid of fear, even though as long as we're still here, we can be anything larger than life, rise up from the ground. We can fall down over 10,000 times, then turn it all right back around. We never imagined how good life can be, but inside you and me we can see past these ghosts in the mirror. We're heroes in disguise, heroes in disguise. Picture this, losing everything you got, never having had a lot, but holding on and on and on. Don't be afraid to dream, 'cause we are so much closer than it seems. We can be anything
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. And my guest, Kelly, knows all about these things, and we're so happy that you're here with us. Her daughter is a survivor of human trafficking, and Kelly has taken action, and she has a company, Childproof of America. And we are so glad that you're here. In our last segment, we were talking a little bit about what happened to your daughter, how you found out, also about how this topic of human trafficking does not get enough airtime. When all the other things we hear about in the news, we don't hear enough about this. What we do see is sometimes sensationalized, and also the different stages of grooming that a trafficker will implement to actually get somebody to convert over to doing what it is they want them to do. So my question for you before the break was, how do they know who to target? How do they know who will follow them?
So Dr. Jacalyn, like you are an expert at what you do. You're an expert. Traffickers are also experts at what they do. It's not something they do kind of part-time. It is their career. They have mastered the process of identifying a vulnerable youth and then pursuing them. This is what they do, and the only thing they do. It is organized crime, and they're on social media so much. There was a 43% increase in online cases from January to April 2020 due to COVID. And as I was reflecting on our time together here during the commercial, I just started thinking, as a viewer who's hearing this for the first time, it has to be so overwhelming. It has to be so overwhelming. And my heart is so passionate for this issue. I don't want to see anybody else go through what we went through as a family. So I want to just kind of take a deep breath and just let your viewers know. Let's take this in baby steps, because it's such a big issue. And sometimes I believe that I come across with so much information because I'm so passionate and I feel like it's so urgent. So I want us to just take a deep breath and understand that there's a lot of complexities in this process of grooming. There's a lot of complexities on understanding how a youth can be drawn into a life of doing something that goes against everything they were raised with. And then also understanding the recovery and the healing, not just for the victim, but for the family. So I want to encourage your listeners, your viewers, to go on our website, childproofamerica.org. There's actually a 45-minute interview on there from my daughter, and she talks in depth about how everything started with her and the process of her getting lured in and the methodical kind of brainwashing. And I have an interview on there as well. The grooming stages are on there. There's so much information. And so I believe in order for people to process something of this magnitude, it's all about just taking baby steps so you can understand one part of human trafficking and then kind of process that and then move on to the next. Because this is so critically important that people are not fearful of this, but empowered by knowledge of this. It is such a huge difference, because I believe when we move through a process of being fearful, sometimes we're paralyzed. Other times we just make very poor decisions because we're working in a space of fear. But if we work instead in a place of empowerment, then we can process the information. And most importantly, we can recognize when the threat is near our child. And I want parents to know that the number one gateway to access our kids is social media. Where did our kids spend so much time during the pandemic? They were online. Predators know this about children. And they were online in some of the biggest platforms that our children visit: Instagram, TikTok. Okay, so all of a sudden I came up with a blank. It's the big one. It's the big platforms that our children use. Snapchat is the one.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, Snapchat. So predators prey where kids play. And they don't approach your child saying, I'm a 58-year-old male in Florida and I want to exploit you. They will say, I am a 16-year-old close to your hometown and I play the same sports. And it's so important for our kids to understand the benefits of social media, but also the dangers of social media. Children get their first smartphone on average at age 10. How can we expect our children at that age to understand a threat that is coming through a screen? It looks so normal and it looks so natural. Somebody's friendly, somebody's encouraging you. But that person who is trying to understand the vulnerability of that target will pick up on things if the youth says, I'm just really bored. I'm really lonely. My parents and I just fight all the time. My boyfriend broke up. My girlfriend broke up with me. Whatever it is, they will finesse that hurt and that vulnerability, and they will start to build that up. Oh my gosh, I saw a picture of you. You're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. I would be so lucky just to have you as a friend. So they start to really identify those weaknesses, as all kids have. I don't care how much money you have, what school you go to, what community you live in. All kids are vulnerable during those preteen and teen years. And predators are masterful at identifying those vulnerabilities and start to build that child up. And that's what we want. We want to hear. We want to be validated. And those predators know that. And then they go from building them up to ultimately an in-person meet up. And I've talked to parents all over the country for the last 5 years. And so many parents are very imperfect, just like I am. But there was engagement with their child. There were, sports and activities and parents really being present for their kids. But it just takes one interaction with somebody online to start that connection, and your life can go down a path you can't even imagine, the nightmare. So we just want to empower our families to understand how to keep their families, their kids safe.
Kelly, thank you for bringing light to that about social media, because it is so true. If you think about it, there's been a lot of focus, especially with younger people. How many followers can you get? The more followers you have, and so when I think myself doing what I'm doing, I get sent pornographic pictures all the time on social media. I don't even open now because I have an idea of, if I don't know the person, they're reaching out. There's a reason. WhatsApp calls coming in all the time. So there are definitely predators. There are people out there who don't have your best interests at heart. So I hope that's kind of a wake-up call for people, that it's not the numbers. It's not just connecting with everyone and anyone, because they may have alternative ideas. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely.
One thing I'd like to talk about is legislation.
Yes.
And we talked a little backstage about the Trump administration and how they were really active in helping with this area of human trafficking. So can you share a little bit about how the Trump administration brought this to light and what's going on now?
Yes. So my daughter, thank goodness, escaped from the people that had her, and that took place several years ago. We were then connected with Ivanka Trump and were invited to the White House, my daughter and I, to meet with Ivanka, who, in our opinion, was absolutely she was just phenomenal. Such a heart and such a champion for this cause. And we were able to really share kind of what our goals were as far as legislation and getting training in schools. And shortly after that meeting in the White House, Ivanka nominated my daughter. See, I always get choked up because it's a journey that you can't ever envision for yourself and for your child. But Ivanka nominated my daughter for the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking. And on April 24, 2020, President Trump nominated, and appointed my daughter to the U.S. Advisory Council for a 2-year term. We then went back to the White House for Human Trafficking Awareness Month, which was January 2020, and participated in a summit with President Trump and some other national leaders. I can tell you from firsthand experience, President Trump and the administration were more effective in this space than any other administration in the history of our country. During office, President Trump signed 9 pieces of legislation to combat human trafficking. He designated more funding to go into this space and appointed a very very savvy leader, Heather Fisher, to oversee the Human Trafficking Task Force for the United States. We saw so much momentum in the space in our country on so many levels because of the Trump administration. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican is very irrelevant to this issue. This issue of human trafficking and child exploitation runs across all demographics on both sides of the aisle. And if you're a Democrat or a Republican and your child is exploited into human trafficking, you want somebody at the helm who has safeguards and tools in place to do something effective. And in my opinion, we lost a major champion of an administration who was doing so much good in the space.
9 pieces of legislation you mentioned.
Yes. And Sesta FOSTA, President Trump signed Sesta FOSTA in 2020. I believe it was 2020, 2019. And that took down Backpage. Backpage was the #1 online just database of child sex trafficking. And so President Trump signed into law Sesta FOSTA, which ultimately took down all websites that advertised children for sex. And so Craigslist and a lot of these smaller online solicitors, they came down pretty quickly. But this case of Sesta FOSTA, it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And ultimately, Backpage got taken down. And that was a massive win for our country. However, it's important for people to understand that because Backpage got taken down, that didn't mean that predators went into another kind of business. It meant that they just had to go look for a new platform that was more underground. And so I do work with law enforcement, and one agency said that they go on to one of the biggest social media platforms that our kids use, and they are decoys as a 13-year-old, and within 60 seconds they're solicited for sex. And so it's very important for people to know that we can do a lot of things legislatively, but traffickers are very invested in what they have been doing, and there's a lot of money involved. They can make $300,000 off one target every year. So imagine if you have 10 victims in your stable, is what they call a stable, and then they're making $300,000 a year off each one of them. So there's a lot of money, and that's why this crime is surpassing weapons and drugs in the United States as the fastest growing criminal enterprise is humans.
Shocking. shocking. Thank you for bringing awareness to all of this. I'm wondering if I just reframe things. So let's accept the fact this is going on. Human trafficking is going on. It's going on everywhere and anywhere. And the people who are the traffickers are people just like you and me. They look like normal people. They have normal lives. And yet they're doing all this, grooming people, exploiting them for huge amounts of money. So first, there's the acknowledgement, the education piece of it. Are there any signs that parents can look for? Obviously, if your child's behavior changes dramatically, that's something, but are there any other classic things to look for?
Yes. If your child is coming home and they have new clothes or new purses, or in a boy's case, new baseball cards or something that boys collect, because 1 in 5 victims are male. So I really want to make sure our audience understands this is not just exclusive to females. But if your child comes home and they have money on them, they have material items on them, that they have no kind of explanation of where those came from, that is definitely a warning sign. But the behaviors are one of the first things that you're going to see. And with our daughter, she was always very sweet, very respectful, and she completely changed. Her personality was completely opposite from what we knew. And as parents, and she was 17 at the time, we are saying, is she hormonal? Is she just being a rebellious teen? Are these changes with like her brain chemistry? Because that's almost what it looks like. So it's really tough. It's really, really tough when you see those changes that are oftentimes commonplace for 16 and 17-year-old kids. But what you need to do beyond that is really search their room. I found a lot of burner phones in my daughter's room, and I was at that time then working with law enforcement and turning over the burner phones. I was finding journals. I was finding, unfortunately, I was finding some alcohol in her room. So I was like the FBI in my own household. And any and everything that I found, I turned over to law enforcement, because I feel that, we can't cover it up as parents. We can't say, okay, well, this was, something, I'm just going to forget about it. We got to face it head on. That's our job as parents. And ironically, before this, Dr. Jacalyn, I worked in prison ministry. I wrote a book for teenagers and teen issues. So I had 10 years of experience working with high-risk youth. So I really am a parent with no fear. I have no fear. And I turned over everything to law enforcement. And I remember when I told my daughter, I said, everything that I found in your room is in the hands of law enforcement. And her response to me was, Mom, you don't have any idea how dangerous these people are. You don't have any idea. You just turned over all this stuff. I said, you bet I did. You bet I did. I'm not going to walk in fear. I'm your parent, and I'm going to work with law enforcement, and I'm going to work with you as well. But you are putting all of your family in danger. And the day that she turned 18, we had nothing. We had nothing. She's a legal adult, and we live in Texas. And so in Texas, that is the legal age. It can be different for different states, but we see a lot of kids being groomed at age 16 and 17 as that 18th birthday approaches, because traffickers know parents and law enforcement will have so little power once that child becomes a legal adult in that state. And that's what happened to us.
So she turned 18. What happened next?
She walked right out the door, and there was nothing I could do. And the traffickers actually came to our neighborhood and picked her up, and she was gone for the next 2 years. And this is the heart of Childproof America right here. This is the heart. When she went missing and taken out of our state, my husband and I frantically just answered phones and followed leads and talked to so many people that work in this space. And we were so overwhelmed because at that time we didn't understand 90% of this issue. We didn't understand what trauma therapy was, what many, many factors of this issue was. And people were calling us from all over because unfortunately our story was high profile for some reason. It went viral and everybody was watching our case, which was horrific on top of horrific already. And everybody wanted to, I think, help us. But we did not have the tools to navigate this. We were not equipped intellectually about this issue to understand what our daughter needed, what little resources we had, how to best utilize those because she was an adult. And it was in those 40 days that we were so overwhelmed with so much information that we were just, I have no words to really describe the chaos of those 40 days when we were so fearful that our daughter was going to be killed. And it was at that time after those 40 days that I started looking for resources for parents. There's so many resources for victims and survivors, and that is critical. But we are parents and grandparents working on the front lines. There has to be somebody out there that can help parents specifically navigate social media, law enforcement, schools, the community. There has to be. This is a no-brainer. And with Houston, Texas being the #1 hub, I felt there would have been many resources out there to help my husband and I, but there was nothing. There was nothing to help us. And so I expanded my search to Texas and then to the United States. And I could not believe there wasn't any organizations created just for caregivers, meaning parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, that would come alongside parents and say, let me show you the way. Let me help you understand what you need, what your other children need, and ultimately what your survivor child is going to need. That's why Childproof America was founded. I felt so strongly that this was such a gap. This was such a gap in our country for parents, #1, to be educated so we can prevent it. And #2, if their child is missing and identified as trafficked, what are the navigation tools to help them increase the probability of a safe outcome? So I founded Childproof America and started developing our signature program, which is Family Guides. Family Guides provides in-person crisis support to parents with missing and exploited children through age 22. So as we look at the number or the ages, the most common age of children that are exploited, we know that it's age 11 to 13. We know that that's a #1 age kids are being targeted for sexual exploitation. But we also see a very big population of 18 and 19-year-old girls and boys being taken from their home, or the kids just literally walk out and then they're gone, just like what happened with us. And we know that we need to come alongside that older age group and help those families understand their resources. And it's limited, let me tell you, limited. Parents have to prove force, fraud, or coercion for law enforcement to come forward and assist that victim. And it's very difficult. If a victim is in the hands of traffickers, they are moving most likely across the United States. And so the chances of that victim self-identifying to say, I'm a victim of human trafficking, and then understand how to make an outcry that identifies them as being in a place of force, fraud, and coercion, it's so difficult. So many times, and most times, law enforcement will put their resources towards minors that you don't have to prove force, fraud, and coercion with the minor. Minors cannot consent to sex. So therefore, those three Those 3, force, fraud, coercion, do not need to be proven in a case of a minor, and law enforcement can go in and extract that minor from a sex trafficking situation. But that is definitely not the case for an adult, and it's very, very difficult, because the victim is being brainwashed, is under the influence of drugs, is being coerced, is fearful, is being physically assaulted if they don't comply. And so it's so hard for an adult victim to make an outcry, and then for law enforcement to come in and be able to do their work. It can happen, but it's very difficult.
I'm just speechless. I had so many questions to ask that you answered, so thank you for doing all of that. We need to take another break, but when we come back, I want to find out how your daughter is doing. I mean, we could have 10, I don't even know how many shows we could have about this, but how your daughter's doing, how you're doing, how people come back from this. And then I want to talk about your organization, and I want to share your slides.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to hear from a couple of our sponsors.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAP partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAP partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from 4-door sedans to SUVs to minivans, to limo buses, to full-size tour buses, and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hello and welcome back. You are still watching Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. And this woman right here is just giving us such an incredible share about what has happened in her daughter's life, in her life, how she decided to do something about it, how the former administration was really instrumental in getting 9 pieces of legislation passed. And if you have a minor child, they could be trafficked and you might not even be able to find where they are. You might not be able to have law enforcement help you. This sounds like the system is broken and there are changes that need to be made. So thank you for everything that you're doing, Kelly.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I'm so honored and I'm so grateful that I can use the hardest thing that myself and our family have ever been through. I can find something in there to bring about positive. And I think that's kind of the key of life, because something like this can like take you out. It can destroy you unless you find a purpose in your pain. And that's what my story is about. And that's what my life has become, finding purpose through my pain and my devastation. I want to just add that I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I have to share education and my story and help families recognize this issue. And I've had so many parents come up to me and grandparents after I do a talk. I do a lot of public speaking. They come up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Kelly, this is exactly what my child is going through right now. I didn't know what it was, but you just explained all these behaviors in the grooming stage. You just saved my child's life, because I have been sitting here not understanding what was happening, and you just outlined verbatim what I'm experiencing in my own home." So I am so grateful for every opportunity that I have to speak to small groups and large groups. But I want to say that this crime is growing so fast that I do feel an urgency to cast our net wide to ensure that every household in the U.S. has this education. And so I took a big leap of faith before the pandemic, and I rented out one of the biggest venues in Houston to do an education summit. And that venue is Smart Financial Center. It's right outside of Houston, Texas. And it seats over 6,000 people. So we are scheduled to deliver a very powerful, dynamic, education-packed summit on January 15th of 2022. We are bringing in survivors from around the country and actually the globe. So we have 2 Jeffrey Epstein survivors who will be speaking. We have speakers that have been exploited through social media. One that was actually pursued in a shopping mall in Massachusetts. And so every speaker that we have comes from a different scenario. And it's a 6-hour summit, because I feel like we need to not leave anything on the table. We need to bring people together. We need to give them the education. And so they understand all these different most common scenarios of exploitation. And so please save the date. It is Saturday, January 15th, 2022. You can be watching this right now and say, but I live in New Jersey. I can't come to Texas. That's okay. We are going to be streaming the entire summit across the United States. So watch our website for more details on that. We have some very, very special surprises within that summit because we understand that this is a very heavy content. And we know that families are going to be there with their preteens, law enforcement, educators, counselors. We're going to have a very diverse audience, but we really want to be sensitive to that younger audience and not just overload them with so many heavy stories. We want to give them some time to process in between our speakers. So we're going to be bringing in some music to inspire us and to kind of help us process, because we don't want people running out of the summit traumatized, because these stories are heavy and we're not here to sugarcoat it. You're going to hear directly from survivors who've walked through the walk but have made it out so they can share with others, so others do not suffer at the hands of our society's most broken people themselves, traffickers.
Unbelievable. The date of the event again is January.
Yes, Saturday, January 15th, 2022. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So this is an ideal month for us to deliver a national summit to equip families across the U.S.
Kelly, as we close out the show, and please, you have to come back because there's so much more to talk about. There's just not enough time in this show. We have 2 images. Can you walk us through what we're looking at?
Yes. So on March 1st, we launched the Human Trafficking Family Support Line. What inspired this is the number of calls we were getting around the U.S. from parents who have children that have been missing for 5 years to children that are just kind of starting in that grooming stage. So we decided to launch a hotline per se. And guess what? In the first 3 months, we've received calls from 15 states. So please share this 833 CP guide, because parents need someone to reach out to ask, what do? I see this image on my child's cell phone. What law enforcement agency do I contact? How do I protect my child? All the way to my 25-year-old child or young adult has been missing for 3 years. Tell me what to do. We just released our Family Guides Handbook. Dr. Jacalyn, I cannot tell you the treasure trove of information in this handbook. It is free to people. We do not charge our families for support. We do not charge anyone for this book. It has taken about 3 years to develop, but it has the best vetted resources across the U.S. and helping parents understand what the resources mean, what is trauma, and how does trauma affect my child that's in a trafficking situation. This hotline is so critical, and it's the only one like it in the United States.
Thank you, Kelly. How about this image?
This next one is our signature program, our Family Guides program. This is a program right now that's exclusive to the Houston area because it is an in-person support program. I would have given anything for this program when our daughter was missing. It provides 2 volunteers who've gone through extensive training. They will literally come to your home and be that point person through your process and provide you with tools to help you navigate the resources that we know your child will most likely need. We support parents through 90 days. And it is a very structured program, and we will provide meals to the families. People provided meals to us when our daughter was missing. It blessed us so much. We provide care packages for the other siblings in the household, because oftentimes parents are focused on the child that's missing and the siblings feel left behind. So the Family Guides program is a program that we will scale and extend throughout the country, one city at a time. We just launched March 1st, 2021.
Again, incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've gone to your website a few times. Very comprehensive. Lots of great information in there. Love the pictures with the Trump family and your daughter. How's she doing now?
I'm so proud of her. You know, a survivor will be in recovery for the rest of their lives. This isn't a one and done and we got some therapy and now we're going on. This is something that survivors will deal with for the rest of their life. But I'm so incredibly proud of her. I get so emotional because it was such a life and death situation for so long. But she is now still serving on the U.S. Advisory Council for the United States. She is the youngest survivor to serve on the U.S. Advisory Council. And she also works with the Department of Justice and the State Department and some fantastic organizations. And so I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful because there are a lot of families that are still looking for their children that have been missing. And so for us to have our child safe and doing something positive through her experience is just, there's nothing in life that is more just joyful than to see your child recover from something so horrific, which could have ended her life, but now she's out to save others. And for that, as a parent, it is the greatest gift ever.
And you couldn't have imagined either one of them happening.
Yes, never. But if God brings you to it, God will bring you through it.
Absolutely. Kelly, for people who are watching or listening now, or who will be watching or listening later, how can we help you?
Just come to our website. Please visit our website, childproofamerica.org. We are a nonprofit organization. If you feel led to donate to help support our programs, wonderful. If you want education, you can tune into our streaming summit in January. If you want to know how you can volunteer, there's so many ways, but just make sure your family has the knowledge of this issue and don't underestimate the power of somebody who's out to exploit your child. But come to our website, get involved, watch our summit, donate, volunteer for some organization in your city, because I promise you, there are nonprofits that work to help parents find those, or help victims, or just help educate. Find those organizations and plug in. There's so much you can do, but we need to be proactive now and not reactive. We don't want to be chasing this anymore. We want to get in front of it and eradicate child exploitation across our globe.
Well, God bless you and your family and your daughter. And thank you so much for everything that you're doing to bring awareness to this topic people don't like to talk about. But as we just learned, it's happening all over the place. So you can bury your head in the sand and say it's not there, but it is. And it sounds like also if you see major changes in your child's behavior, that's a reason for you to get involved immediately. And like you said, you're a detective, right? You just went through the room, see what's going on there. And you can't turn away and pretend, because nothing good's going to come from that.
We're not here to be friends with our kids. We're here to protect them and be parents. And we need to step up as parents and do the hard work. Because if we do not, your child's life will be forever changed. And so don't be afraid to parent. We are the parents. Get your kid's cell phone out, look through it, go in their rooms, talk to them, have those hard conversations. That's our job. And God entrusted those beautiful, small people to us, and we need to parent.
Well said, Kelly. I'd like to put your slides up on my social media platforms if you're okay with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We want to get the word out. Parents can call us from around the U.S. or internationally just to talk. We've got our lines open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with some fantastic trained volunteers who can talk to you for 5 minutes to 2 hours. So it's a very interactive phone call. Please don't hesitate. If you see something suspicious, you have concerns, please call, reach out, we can help.
Kelly, I'm just so thrilled that you came here today, and that's, again, a topic that doesn't get enough attention, and yet it's devastating. It ruins lives, and people can die from this, and
yes,
it breaks up families. And so thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for this summit, 6 hours, and the survivors that you're bringing together sound just like an event that everybody should be interested in.
Yes.
And so, and the information's all on the website. You'll be able to watch this program again. Go over to Dr. Jacalyn LLC on YouTube. And Kelly, I seriously would love to have you back again and find out what other things you're have come up, what's going on with Childproof America, and how we can continue to help you.
I would love to be back on, Dr. Jacalyn. Just let me know and count me in.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for your to your team for their help in putting together the slides and making this happen today.
Very grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Oh, my goodness. That topic, it needs so much more attention. And like I said in the very beginning, I watch Law and Order SVU, and they have episodes about this. And you know, you're watching a show. This woman just shared her own personal story, her daughter's story, and how she's out there helping every single day, helping other parents who they're going through it. Their child's missing. Their child has been trafficked and drugged and promised all these things that aren't true and sold for money. It's absolutely devastating. So I'm really grateful to Kelly that she came here today and shared her story. And let's all get involved and help with this issue. I want to thank you for a great 3 days of broadcasting. As you know, we broadcast Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And this week we had 16 shows. I stand for all of our shows. I'm still standing. My legs are killing me, but I stand for those who can't stand. So I hope you have a beautiful week. And I hope that you do come back and visit us. If you'd like to be a guest, please go to drjacalyn.com and you can book your session there. Also, a couple of other things. I did launch my first book. It's called Behind the Green Screen, and it is how to succeed in the live broadcasting business. But it's actually also my vulnerable shares about things that have happened to me, sexual harassment, being kept from getting jobs that I should have had, and how people have tried to stand in my way and keep me back, and how I developed this platform in the last 8 months. So I was in corporate America for my whole career. I retired during the pandemic, and I decided to start this broadcasting platform. It was just one show with a phone and the radio station. From there, we went to Zoom, and we were not being seen. We were just on the radio. Then we had our first show on social media. That was August of last year. And now we have between 16 and 18 shows every week. So it's been quite a journey. And the book tells you all about how I did it and how you can do it. And you could have a free copy if you email me at Jacalyn@drjacalyn.com. That's a wrap for this week. I'm going to go spend some time with my mother and my brother-in-law and my sister. It's been great seeing you. Thank you again. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care. If you see behavior that doesn't make sense, do something about it. Get involved. You could save somebody's life. Thank you.